Are there any bill introductions? Any bill introductions? Okay, seeing none, I have one announcement. I'm going to be going straight upstairs to testify on an education bill whenever I get alerted to do that. It will take me longer to go up the steps and come back down the steps than it will for me to testify. So I'm just going to recess for like 5 minutes when I get that call. So just so everyone's aware. Okay, the business before us today is making budget recommendations for Kansas Wildlife and Parks. So Luke is online, correct?
I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, would you give us a quick overview of the Wildlife and Parks budget, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. So the committee should have the budget summary for Wildlife and Parks. I would just note for Wildlife and Parks for both fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026, there were no supplemental or enhancement requests submitted by the agency. I would further note, Madam Chair, that changes regarding the agency's request and the Legislative Budget Committee's recommendations can be found on page number 3. And that is the deletion of $1.9 million general fund from reappropriation for one-time dam repairs. The Legislative Budget Committee recommends deletion of that reappropriation. I would then also note that the agency added an FTE, and that is on item 14, page 6. The LBC recommends the deletion of that. That's through the global recommendation to delete all FTE increases. And then finally, Madam Chair, you would note the FTE reduction in 2026 as well, and that is in item 11 or found on page 10. And then additionally, Madam Chair, on page 10, you will find some deletions of EDIF that are recommended by the Legislative Budget Committee in 2026, and that would include some reductions for their agency's overall operating expenditures, park operating expenditures, and then an increase of $109 for National Guard licenses. Madam Chair, those are the quick overview of the changes between the agency's request and the LBC's recommendation. I can certainly stand for any other questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Luke. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we will go ahead and proceed to work the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks budget for the end of fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 2026. Are there any adjustments? Representative Carlin.
Thank you. Sorry, I just cannot get an elevator from, with one shut down all the time and people in all the others. I'm sorry to be late. I had a couple that I was concerned about. The dams, do we need information on that presented to the committee, or I would be interested in restoring that money if somebody needs information before we do that? Can that be done? I don't know.
Thank you, Representative Carlin. Is someone from Wildlife and Parks available to answer the request for returning the $1.9 million? Welcome to committee.
Thank you.
State your name.
My name is Christopher Kennedy. I'm the Acting Secretary for Kansas Wildlife and Parks.
Because it was requested by the agency and recommended deletion by the LBC, I'd like you to tell us, explain the need and go over a little bit with us, please.
Absolutely. These were funds that were allocated to the agency in 2024. We, at the agency, we've got over $11 million in dam repairs that we need to make on various dams, and this was given to the agency to help us, begin to nip away at the dam repairs that we have. It was originally 2.4. We've spent right at $800,000, paying for divers and those that inspect the dams in preparation to repair those dams. And that's what we were going to utilize the remaining 1.9 million for.
Might
Committee,
follow
any
up-
questions?
yeah,
Representative
Follow
Carlin.
up with that. So you mentioned divers. Do they dive every time they inspect? Is that where the inspection is? I've never asked.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. And I've got our head engineer here with us as well if you've got specific questions about those repairs.
I think probably that's enough. I don't want to take too much time on it unless other people have questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Alcala.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little confused. So are they returning those dollars? Is that what they're saying?
Luke, do you want to explain that? The 1.9
Yes.
going away because of LBC?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Yes. Madam Chair and Representative, in order to answer the question, the agency did not request for those monies to be deleted or returned back to the general fund. That is a Legislative Budget Committee recommendation to do so. I would also note, and I apologize, Madam Chair, for not mentioning this, when I first went through the budget, just at noon today, the building committee had some recommendations on wildlife and parks capital improvement plans, and this dam repair is part of that capital improvement plan. And the the building committee's recommendation is to not delete that 1.9 million SGF.
Thank you, because I was a little confused because I was just in that meeting. And then to come over here and hear that, I'm like, it just was confusing. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Representative Roth.
Just a comment. I'm still relatively confused about the 6,000 plus dams that need to be repaired with the Department of Agriculture, and then the dams that you all are wanting money for. And so they're not a part of the 6,000 dams that the Department of Agriculture was asking money for.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I know last week we had a flurry of activity on passing some buckets for water, and some of that did deal with dams, or this is separate, correct?
Correct.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are dams associated within the park system.
Well, no, ma'am. The dams within the park system are typically federal dams. These dams are on our public wildlife areas that we own solely.
That's what I meant. Thanks for catching that.
No problem.
Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Luke, could you help us with the $1.9 million request in the capital budget for 26 for dam repair also? It's on page 12. And let's talk about that compared to this 25 request. Can you do that?
Madam Chair, Representative, yes, I can. So the 2.9, or excuse me, the 1.9 million that is in that the committee is discussing in regard to that reappropriation, that would show there, Madam Chair, on for a visual of the numbers themselves on page 11. You will see that the agency request for dam repair in the column for agency 2025 is at 2.9. To note for the committee, the agency also utilizes fee and federal funds for dam repairs. And that's why you will see then, Madam Chair and committee members, for the agency's request for 26 for dam repairs, there's also money in there. There's no general fund, as you would note below in the financing section. So the general fund is a portion of the funding that the agency is requesting to use for dam repairs in the current year. And then if you move to then page 12, where it talks about deleting the 1.9, Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is the same recommendation as what is up above. Since this is a capital improvement, it is listed twice in this budget summary document.
Thank you, Luke. Any other comments, questions from the committee? Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we reinstate the 1.9 million SGF that was removed by LBC for one-time dam repairs in FY 2025 for $1.9 million.
It's been moved to reinstate the 1.9 million. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Carlin. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of reinstating the 1.9 million for fiscal year 2025, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Any other comments about the Wildlife and Parks budget for 2025 and/or 2026? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was trying to find in the document, I know that we had a discussion about finishing the trails project. And so I was trying to figure out where we ended up with that.
Secretary Kennedy, can you answer that? Or Luke, can you point us to the financial world of finishing that trails park?
Madam Chair, I would note for the committee, the trails that the representative is asking about. Again, on page 11, you can see the numbers in figure 8, and that would be under trails development. The second one from the bottom, you'll see the lines there showing the total estimated spend for 25 and 26. I would then note that for trails development, the narrative on that is for 2025 is found on page 14. It does mention there that the $3 million general fund that was appropriated by the legislature last year, that counts as the full match to draw down those federal raise monies. $7 million is being estimated to come in from federal raise dollars in 2025. And then, Madam Chair, on page 17, there's a discussion there about 2026. There's going to be an estimated $5.1 million in raise money. And then also to mention, Madam Chair, the agency does for many of their different capital improvements types, they do utilize a litany of different fee and federal funds for those. So that's where you can find it in your budget summary document.
And am I correct in saying that these funds for the next year and a half will hopefully complete this project?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So it's in the budget. Representative Carlin.
I'm confused again. Every time we talk about a different item, I have to look at it again. This, on page 17 under Trails Development, it says that the agency wants to delete the 3.9 million, and the budget committee agreed with that. So I'm still confused about what ask is. So we need the 3.9 million to finish the trails by 26, end of 26?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry. I apologize. The Flint Hills Trail, well, the Flint Hills Trail project, I want to clarify for everybody, is an 8-year project. And so it will go on and is supposed to be completed in 8 years. So I wanted to clarify for the question that you all gave me.
So when it says in here that the agency would be willing to delete that money and that the LBC said no change, that means they agree, then that would be no money for 26 or 25.
Luke?
Yep, Madam Chair, I can answer that question. So on page 17, Madam Chair, where the representative notes the deletion, you'll notice that that last sentence of the narrative there, the change is a decrease of 3.9 million from the approved number in 2025. So we use the approved number as the baseline to show the change. And so that is because, as noted earlier, the $3 million general fund is estimated to be spent in 2025, so therefore not available in 2026. That would make up the lion's share of that deletion. Again, that's more to do with the timing and how we compare agency requests from fiscal year to fiscal year. And then also too, it will be a slight reduction in estimated federal raise monies coming into that as well. So in 2025, the agency is estimating $7 million, I believe. for raise monies to come in. 5.1 million, and then, or excuse me, 5.1 million in 2026. And then in 2025, the agency estimates for those trail development, raise grant monies to be 7 million. So again, that's just simply a comparison between fiscal years, is where you see that deletion from. I hope that answers the question. So it's not necessarily a deletion as much as it is a reduction in estimated expenditures.
Thank you, Luke. I don't, that's way more information than I was asking for. And someone here in the committee understands that. Well, I would like to hear their comment, and then I'll be quiet.
I would just translate that the money was appropriated and the agencies agreed to delete 3.9 of the money that was appropriated. So they are still getting considerable money for the program.
I think what you all are,
Mr. Secretary,
we
let
took
me-
the whole amount of money.
Let me interrupt you for just a second. Our chairman had to leave the committee for just a few minutes to testify. And I think she's wanting to hear your testimony along with the rest of us. So I'm going to ask that we recess just for a couple of minutes and stand at ease. And we'll return in just a few minutes. Thank you.
My apologies for being gone. I got caught upstairs, but we're good to go now. So, where were we?
Madam Chair?
Yes, yeah. Representative Carlin.
I was asking for explanations about the deletion and
That's right. The 3.9.
continuation, and I am satisfied that the money is in the budget, so I will stop.
Any other comments, questions about the Wildlife and Parks budget? Representative Long.
Mr. Secretary, I wonder, in your budget on page 10, I don't know if you have that in front of you, but you're talking about some EDIF operating expenditures and some EIDF park operations expenditures to the tune of both of them together about a $700,000 expenditure.
It was 800,000.
My question is, if we were not to fund those, you would have to fund those from probably fee funds or something else. Could you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, yes. Our parks have always struggled in the state of Kansas to balance and meet the needs, for all of our parks. And that funding has always been there and intended to help with operating cost. If that $800,000 were taken away, it would dramatically impact our ability to upgrade infrastructure in the parks. If we have a variety of infrastructure issues in our parks, especially on the eastern side of the state, and we would have to take funding from that to cover the salaries and operating costs.
Any further discussion? Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. I may take a little bit to say these, we may not have as many parks west of here, but they are in dire need. And so while I am in the matter of time, we're kind of getting pushed to move this budget forward. I would like to see, even after this budget is moved out of this committee, to have somebody get me and I have a rough outline of some of the work that's going to be done in some of these parks. But when I was at Norton, they don't have the right machinery to get their work done, let alone personnel. And what we're having the manager, the ranger do is abominable. And there are things that those of us that aren't around Pratt or around Topeka feel like, or we're not the new shiny one on the block, that we kind of get left out. So I would like to see a plan, even a rough draft of the next 10 years of what is going to be, you're not the only agency that comes and bemoans the fact of equipment and upgrades but I don't typically see that happening, in our places west of, say, I-35. So anyway, and also just as the EDIF system was set up, that was kind of part of the whole situation, was to pull wildlife and parks out of the state general fund. The biggest portion of that, when that was created back, with the lottery and all that that would be kind of, and maybe a couple years after that, but that would be the driving force is that kind of a pseudo fund almost, if you will, a fee, not a fund, but a fee. And so that's why so much of that operational is EDIF. And that's one of those things that's just truly baked in, and really you don't have much. Just for a background of why, and I don't, Mr. Secretary, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but that's the way I've always understood the reason why so much of the operating is in EDIF, because that was a decision made probably 4 or 5 administrations ago when that was done. So, Madam Chair, thank you, and I guess I have no question, but I would sure like to have some sort of an outline of how I hear that you're fair and look at all of them kind of on equal footing, and so I look forward to seeing what the plan might be.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. about 98% what you said. Right when I came into the agency, roughly about 10 months ago, you know, the issues with infrastructure were obvious to me. And I stayed at a quite bit of our state parks from west to east. And I would agree with your assessment. Where, you know, it was at that point in time I came back to my staff and my engineering staff in particular and said, I want an asset infrastructure inventory, which in where we look at all of our assets across the agency, our buildings, our HVAC systems, our windows, our parking lots, our roads, our pumps, and all the plethora of other infrastructure that we have with not just in parks, but also in our public lands area. And we're going to take an inventory and take an honest look at, okay, how do we triage this list? And I am fair. I don't believe in the shiny penny, and we'll go to the, you know, what the infrastructure that needs it the most first. I would estimate that within the next 4 months we should have that inventory done, and I would be more than happy to share that with you, along with our plans for how we plan to triage the infrastructure issues that we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know this is going to come quick to us as far as looking at EDIF funds. And so it might be somewhat helpful if we had kind of a clear understanding of the history of that fund, what it was intended to fund, and perhaps, you know, just a little more guidance. It's my understanding that perhaps the EDIF fund, we have actually appropriated or directed more funds out of there, and we've had to supplement that with state general funds. So it would just, I think as we move forward, since this is going to cross so many other agencies, it would be good to just kind of get a better handle. Because I felt like last week when we did the water stuff, that too was one of those that crossed so many agencies in so many different buckets that it was really hard to track what we were doing with the budget documents that we were reviewing. So as we start kind of parsing this EDIF fund and looking at what is funded, and you know, in that, it might be good just to have a better overview and understanding. Thank you.
That sounds like a fabulous informational hearing for sometime in February. Dylan, if you guys could, after we're done, but that way we'll know, because we don't have time now. But yeah, we'll get that on the schedule. Any other? Representative Carlin.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. You know, tourism and, you know, Kansas and flyover state and drive-through state. We've got beautiful parks, but they're a little bit off I-70 and people have to find them. And so I think it's really disappointing to visitors when they go to a park and there's no amenities or they're falling apart. So I want them to come back next year and the next when they go see grandma. And so I really have fussed with our people around Tuttle Creek because it's, you know, it's a Corps of Engineers and yet we have responsibility. And 2013, I believe it was, I worked really hard to get some ramps to the fishing docks for the ADA accessibility was down. And I hope you would check that in your inventory, how we look with the ADA. And also, we had a boat ramp that was washed out in the flood of 2019. And I finally got that fixed, maybe last year or year before. I mean, the backlog of work is amazing. And so, but we had a lot of users that were pushing. So when your users push, I know when you say you're going to set priorities, well, squeaky wheels get the grease, unfortunately. Not every park maybe has the same demand, but we all have the same needs. And so I appreciate your comments. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Alcala.
I have a comment also. I don't want the squeaky wheel to get I want you to continue. You've only been here a year, and you came into something that squeaky wheels have been fixing for a long time. And so I would ask that my colleagues give you a chance to find the priorities in any issues that are issues with elected officials. They should send you a flag saying, hey, you know, I'd like to see this, like to see that. I'd like for you to continue on the path you're going on. I've been pretty impressed with what you've brought forward and what you've talked about. But if we start squeaky wheeling the staff and the department, we'll be right back where we are. And something in my district may get tons of funding and tons of improvements and get no people. So I would hope everybody would take that into consideration.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions about this budget? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Representative Roth.
I move we accept the Kansas Department of Wildlife Parks budget as it is, and with the, we made the one amendment to it, correct? Yes.
It's been moved and seconded to, yeah, Representative Alcala seconded it, to pass out the budget as amended. Is there any discussion? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was waiting just a second to pause to let others, but I wanted to make a motion. I wanted someone to make a motion to fund the 700,000, I believe it was, and I heard 800,000, I heard 700,000, but to do the recommended operating expenditures from EDIF, that money, if if it comes out of state general fund, that, it's going to come somewhere, I suppose. But we need to be realistic about the cost of our operations in that department so we can do better in the future. And so I move that I would like to make a substitute motion if that would be allowed.
There's been a substitute motion to reinstate the roughly $700,000 of EDIF operating expenditures and park operations funds. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. More discussion on that?
He's looking for it.
Representative Rogers.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm looking here, when I'm looking at EDIF, I don't see they took that out.
Yes, on page 10.
I'm looking
Number-
at the sheet.
It's on this, Ken.
So the budget committee, Madam Chair,
The LBC deleted both of those amounts. One, roughly $300,000 for operating expenditures and roughly $400,000 for parks operations. And then in number 14, they put back in $109, not $100,000, $109. We could all go out for ice cream together and that would be gone, for the National Guard and veterans licenses.
okay, I'm sorry, what page is this?
Page 10.
Page 10, it says.
And I was just told those are
I don't see it.
Charday, or Luke, sorry. Luke, can you go through those?
Madam Chair, Luke Drury, Senior
Oh,
Fiscal
I'm
Analyst,
sorry.
Legislative Research.
I'm sorry.
To answer your question, the Legislative Budget Committee did recommend reductions of $292,484. from the line item appropriation for EDIF operating expenditures within the agency. And then also a reduction of $398,359 to park operating expenditures. Again, those are both individual line items. And then in addition, $109 to the National Guard and Veterans licenses.
So these are adjustments to existing appropriations.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Representative Curtis.
Okay, so I'm confused. So do they have the current level of funding for items 12 and 13 on page 10, the EDIF operating expenses and parks? Are those amounts then over and beyond the amount that they currently have funding for?
Luke?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The Department of Wildlife and Parks would still maintain a level of EDIF appropriations, just that would be reduced. You would note, or I would note, Madam Chair, I believe the easiest way to see this would be on page 1 of your budget summary document. You will notice that the agency's request for EDIF expenditures in 2026 is about 4.6 million. The Legislative Budget Committee's reductions bring that to about 3.9 million. So then you can see there what the reduction would be. So to answer the representative's question is that they still do maintain funding. This would be a reduction to the base allocations to the agency.
Any other comments or questions? If not, Representative
Madam
Rogers.
Chair, I'm sorry, and I know we're dragging this thing out, but it looks like that's about a 15% reduction. So I don't know if it was just a cut, a slice. Did anybody talk to you about that and
Why it was cut?
about why it was cut, or do they believe that operations can still maintain, or has there been any discussion of why that is?
No,
Nobody reached out from the agency?
no.
Okay, well, I know. Whatever. I don't want to drag it out, but we'll let the votes count.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Carlin, you may close.
Thank you. If, on page 10, as to summarize and maybe help clear up something that I'm finally maybe clear on, page 10, item number 12 and 13, if you'll see there, if you can get with me on the EDIF operating expenses, it says agency, no action. That means the agency didn't ask for it. Correct? Anybody disagree with that?
Luke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, to answer the representative's question, that is correct. When that budget summary says no action, that would be correct to state that the agency, this is not a request that came from an agency. It was not previously discussed prior to the Legislative Budget Committee's recommendation for such deletions, and then the addition of 109 as well.
Thank you, Luke. And so I believe that actually means that we would be restoring the LBC's action. No? I'm closing. But I'd be glad to not close, but, what's the process here? I'd be glad to let him speak.
Representative Rogers.
I think if we look a little closer, Madam Chair, and sorry, Representative, this is, looking upon it, I think this is the money that was reappropriated. And so what it is it's putting it back in balance. So as far as a cut, it's not there. It's bookkeeping to get it because there was money in there that was not used. Let's look here. We're the appropriators, okay? So I think the way it is, if we need to make changes and go for appropriations and go in front of the Budget Committee. And so that's right. I mean, I think so it looks like to me that's what it is. It's a reappropriation. And in the world of government budgeting, if you don't get a 5 or 10, 15% increase, well, then it's a cut. But we're not there. So, Madam Chair, I apologize, but let's move on.
Okay, Representative Carlin, you may close.
I believe that if we do not pass the motion I'm going to make, or that I've made, that there will be a deletion of $700,000 from the agency's budget that they use for operating expenses, which is cars and repairs and whatever else you do in an operating budget. And I do not believe we can afford to take less money in our operating budget than we had last year. And that's why I made the motion. And with that, Madam Chair, I move my motion.
Okay, no more discussion? All those in favor of the amendment to reinstate the 292-484 for operating and the 398-359 for parks operations, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. No. Appears the noes have it. The noes do have it. It will stay as is. Any further discussion on this budget? We're back on the original motion, which has been introduced to pass the budget as amended. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of passing out the Kansas Wildlife and Department of Wildlife and Parks budget as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
No.
Motion carried. Thank you, Secretary Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Okay, now I'd like to turn your attention to your commerce packets. Luke, if you would like to go over the commerce budget for the state of Kansas, I would be grateful. We all would be grateful. Oh, Luke, sorry. Charday.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Charday Kane, and I am senior. Yep. My name is Charday Kane, and I'm a senior fiscal analyst for KLRD. The Kansas Department of Commerce has a mission to empower businesses and communities using strategic resources to realize prosperity in Kansas. The agency serves as the lead agency for economic development through the promotion of business, industry, trade, and workforce training within the state. The agency operates through 6 divisions: administration, business development, workforce services, Quality Places, International Division, and Tourism. And there's more information about each of those divisions on pages 1 and 2. In the middle of page 3, I will begin the fiscal year 2025 analysis. Figure 3, budget comparison. The 2025 agency revised estimate is $290.1 million, which is $12.8 million or 4.6% above the approved amount. Figure 4 outlines each of those adjustments. Item number 1 is the SGF reappropriation in the amount of $312,000. Item number 2 is EDIF reappropriations. The agency carried over $5.9 million in unspent EDIF monies into fiscal year 2025. At the top of page 4, the agency did not take any action to those reappropriations. The LBC deleted $5.9 million to remove reappropriations in fiscal year 2025. Item number 3 is related to a supplemental request for Sunflower Summer Program for $3 million EDIF. Item number 4 is related to ARPA projects. The agency's revised estimate includes a deletion of $32.9 million, including $6 million SGF in fiscal year 2025 for one-time projects that took place in fiscal year 2024 and for SGF projects that were changed to ARPA funds because they were available. Item number 5 is related to Apex funding. This was $13.2 million, and it's a deletion due to the agency determining that these funds will not be utilized by the end of fiscal year 2025. Item number 6 is related to small businesses. This is an increase of $25.2 million, all from federal funds for the State Small Business Credit Initiative. Item number 7 is for community development block grants. It's an increase of $14.5 million, all from federal funds. Item number 8 is broadband grants. It's an increase of $12.1 million, all from federal funds. And there's 2 programs there, the BEAD Broadband Access and Deployment and the Middle Mile Broadband Grant. Item 9 is related to the engineering graduate incentives. This is related to 2023 House Bill 2292, which provides a transfer of twice the amount of funds expended in grants in the prior fiscal year, and it's an increase of $1.5 million. Item number 10 is the Retain program. This is an increase of $1 million, all from federal funds, to assist with helping workers who become ill or injured remain in the labor force and reduce long-term work absences. Item number 11 is related to the apprenticeship program. This is an increase of about $920,000, all from federal funds. Item 12 is an increase of 7.5 FTE positions. Those positions are listed there, and the LBC did delete those FTE positions. And item 13 is related to all other adjustments primarily attributable to federal grant opportunities in the amount of about $750,000. And I'm happy to stand for questions on fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Sharday. Committee, Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sharday, I noticed that on several of these items, there's not a LBC recommendation. Can you explain that? And when you start like on page 4, from items 4 on down, has the agency, but it doesn't have an LBC. So I'm not sure, having trouble tracking that, does that mean those dollars have been added or not? Oh, I must have an old sheet from last week that doesn't have all this stuff on it. Okay, thank you. Oh, I'll just stick this in my folder. Here, I'll just stick it in there. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So, question or no question?
No question, my sheet just did not have that information.
Any other questions on the 2025 budget analysis for commerce? If not, please proceed to 26.
For fiscal year 2026, I am on page 7. In figure 6, the 2026 agency request is 190.4 million, which is a decrease of about 80.7 million or 29.8% below the approved amount. Figure 7 has the summary of budget requests. Item number 1 is related to the Sunflower Summer Program. The agency's request includes 3 million EDIF for the Sunflower Summer Program. Item 2 is related to an enhancement request for World Cup marketing in the amount of 1 million EDIF to create and market through billboards and highlight Kansas tourism. Item 3 is an enhancement request for healthcare upskilling to create a training program that will provide Kansas hospitals and other entities with funding to support existing training programs in the amount of $1 million. Item 4 is an enhancement request for a mobile visitor center. This is a pilot program, and it's a van that travels across the country sharing visitor information about Kansas. The request is for 500,000 EDIF and 2 FTE positions. Item number 5 is related to the Kansas Arts Commission. It's a request for $500,000 EDIF to expand grant programs for nonprofit arts organizations, general operating support, enhance arts education programs, and support cultural facility improvements. On page 9, item number 6, the enhancement request for transparency database is for 350,000 EDIF to make improvements to the transparency database by hiring a consultant for fiscal year 2026 to sync with the transparency database and provide real-time searchable data. Item number 7 is an enhancement request for Global Growth Program. This has 4 different components. One is a Canada in-country representative, an accelerator program that assists Kansas companies in entering an international market, 2 global resources programs to assist Kansas companies in global supply chain strategy, and higher education institutions in assisting them with their expansion of outreaching with international students. Item number 8 is related to the Kansas Kids Magazine enhancement request. This is for $125,000 to create a special edition of the Kansas Magazine, specifically for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students, as well as current magazine subscribers, and it would highlight and showcase Kansas through stories to engage young students. Item 9 is an enhancement request for a broadband grant analyst to work with the compliance and reporting manager and consultant to monitor and track broadband funding. Item 10 is a deletion of 64 million SGF in one-time projects approved by the 2024 Legislature. Item 11 is a deletion of 34.5 million in ARPA projects that were one-time. Item 12 is a deletion of 7.3 million off from special revenue funds for a one-time housing economic development program. Item number 13 is a deletion of 2 million in a one-time remodeling project. Item 14 is an increase of 17.2 million off from federal funds for broadband grants for fiscal year 2026. Item 15 is related to the Job Creation Program Fund. It's an increase of 5 million. Item 16 is a decrease of 1.9 million off from federal funds for community development block grants. Item 17 is an increase of 6.5 FTE positions that are listed there. And item 18 is a deletion of about 110,000 in all other adjustments related to federal grant programming. And on page 12, item 19 is EDIF adjustments. The Legislative Budget Committee deleted 4.3 million EDIF for various programs for fiscal year 2026. I would also note that on page 13, you can find the capital budget and debt. The request is for fiscal year 2025 for the storefront and windows in the amount of 200,000 and a roofing project for fiscal year 2026 in the amount of 130,000. On page, and this was heard before the Joint Committee on State Building Construction, and they did approve those projects. On page 14, you can find the reference tables, the 10-year expenditure table, as well as expenditures and FTE by program. On the yellow sheet, you can see the governor's differences from Legislative Budget Committee recommendations. And the green sheet will show the commerce changes. Specifically for item number 19, if you want to see that deletion of 4.3 million, that agency request versus House Bill 2007 columns will show you those deletions.
That's the last two columns on this paper.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Sharday. Outstanding. Committee questions on 2026 Commerce budget? I'm sure we'll have some going forward because these are a lot of numbers to absorb. Representative Carlin.
Yeah. I heard you, but tell me again. On page 12, we have one item, it's item 19, and we can, I just kind of wanted, for one thing, I want to look at it on the green sheet kind of a little more in depth. So I found it here because we have a page number, and commerce is just a whole bunch of long list with no numbers, so where is that? It's EDIF adjustments. So it's various adjustments?
Correct.
So it's out of all of those top EDIF things, they're taking a little bit out of each, and that's the total? Okay, and it says the agency took no action.
That is correct.
Has the agency had an opportunity to take action?
Their request is in this column, so this is their action, if you.
Hold it straight, I didn't see which
Oh.
column you were in.
The agency request column is their action, if you will. Okay. And then the overall adjustment to the EDIF table.
So
is the
if the
LBC
agency
adjustment.
request is, on the top one is $11 million and the LBC recommendation is 9.4.
That is correct.
I don't call that a cut, I'll call that a reduction. I mean, it's costing you money, and so I call it a cut, but whatever. And so all the way down there, if they've asked for broadband development of 1.19 and there's nothing in the column by LBC, then they're recommending no change, nothing in there, no appropriation in that line item. So that means when we add them all up across there, we're going to come up with 4.3 million. And that is a cut to the agency of the service and the operations of the economic development efforts in Kansas by the Department of Commerce. You don't have to answer that. That's a statement I made. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments or questions about the EDIF funds or 2025-26 budgets? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to make sure I'm following this correctly. So if you follow it all across, it looks like in our House Bill 207, which was our legislative budget, that we have reduced by a certain amount, certain percentage across the board, the EDIF funds. Is that a starting point for us? Do we have any? Again, I wish we had more information about EDIF, where that fund is, how it works, what we should be funding out of it. That would make more sense in our deliberations. But is a starting point just a blanket across the board, or should we be looking at these programs to make sure that these are indeed programs that should be funded out of EDIF? Instead of just having a blanket cut, because I'm very concerned when I look at the broadband office that we have like basically zeroed out the broadband office. And I would say that is an essential government service because broadband is essential to everybody. And until everybody in this state has broadband, I'm not sure we should be zeroing out the broadband office.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as we talked about operations, wildlife, and parks, when this was done, Commerce Department was created. I may be speaking a little bit out of turn, but most of Commerce has run out of this. So broadband development program is different than the Office of Broadband. There's two different things there. What has happened over time is that we had the budget, we had the omnibus, then we had the old EDIF out here. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna use it as a prop. But you had kind of this EDIF out there, and so we all just kind of took a little bit and piece after those ones that were all funded from. And so what has happened over time is that if we couldn't get through, SGF, well, let's take from EDIF. So what's happening was we were backfilling that from the SGF. And so I think as they looked at this budget, they were trying to clean it up. And so some of that stuff that was not supposed to be in EDIF. Now we can have that discussion in a few weeks and go back to the history and how it started growing that way. But that's the reason why. So I think, yes, as you look, and I think as Commerce makes their presentation, we can ask them some of the cuts they made, other cuts that were made, and why. But that's kind of why as we look at the EDIF, is that it is overfunded. And the money that's coming in there, and so what was happening is it just kind of almost become a secondary budget with no guardrails. And so they're trying to bring that back in to pull what's truly used for. And so that's why this year is kind of a transition year in moving that forward. So that, Madam Chair, if that kind of helps that process.
Does that help? I think our Commerce presenter will shed more light on this might be the proposal, and they might come at us with what they can live with. So let's wait till we hear from Commerce. Any other questions for Sharday?
I did have one more thing. On the back of this sheet, there is a little information on the history of it. I am the EDIF coordinator for our office, so I am happy to answer any questions or come in and present, but I just wanted to let you know that there is some information on the back as well.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time to hear from the Department of Commerce. Welcome to committee, Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Willis. I'm Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. So I'll do my best here. Before we get started, I did just want to quickly highlight some of the wonderful things that our agency's been able to do, specifically last year. We continue to build on momentum and see more and more economic growth here in the state, and are proud of our work. We are no longer a state that's lagging behind in economic development. We are leading and setting new expectations for states and regions across the country. So as you know, our agency consists of a variety of different divisions. Those include Business Development, Quality Places Division, the Office of Broadband Development, our Work Services, our Office of Registered Apprenticeship, our International Development Team, and Kansas Tourism. So on the second page of my testimony, I've got a good list here of some of our proudest accomplishments. So I'll just highlight a few and won't read them all to you. So in the last year, 2024, the Business Development Team facilitated 269 economic development successes, equaling about $3.5 billion in capital investment and commitments to create and retain a little over 5,000 jobs, 5,306 jobs. The average wage of these new jobs was right around $66,000, nearly 8% above the state's median wage. Commerce, the second bullet there, Commerce, we recreated the Office of Small Business Development and Entrepreneurship as we work to diligently serve our small businesses and entrepreneurs better across the state. This office has already seen great success as they were able to procure $2.6 million from the U.S. Treasury's State Small Business Credit Initiative. So we're really excited about that. It will help provide targeted financial support, again, helping those small businesses access capital, expand their operations, and stimulate economic development. The third bullet there on page 2 is our highlight from our international division. We've been able to receive some enhancements in the past and really build back up our international division. We're able to conduct 11 trade missions in the last year. 2 of those were leadership-led FDI missions to Canada. We participated, of course, in the air show, and we had meetings with businesses in Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Spain, and Germany. We're also exploring more trade and FDI relationships with Brazil and Australia. I wanted to highlight our Office of Broadband Development. They're currently overseeing 9 programs with 86 active projects. We anticipate by FY 2026, there'll be more than $661.9 million anticipated funds that will have been invested, with more than 100,000 homes and businesses that will serve that high-speed broadband. In July of last year, we finally kicked off the Love Kansas Talent Attraction Campaign, where we're targeting what we call boomerangers. So folks that once lived and worked here in Kansas, maybe received their education, and then have moved away from the state for a different job. We want them to come back to Kansas, right? So since then, we've successfully had 14 families move back to the state. We have over 60 communities participating in this program and have hosted 75 events. And then lastly, the last bullet there on page 2, our Office of Apprenticeship, they really continue to set a high bar, and we've seen significant growth, jumping 10 spots to number 29 in the nation in total of new apprentices, following just an overall statewide increase of about 27% last year. So again, just wanted to highlight, and there's more, there's lots more on that page, but some of our great work and things that we've been able to do within the last year. So on page 3, I wanted to talk just a little bit about our reappropriation dollars. So you'll see a chart there with that total of right at $5.8 million, closer to $5.9 million. Those are related specifically to a couple projects and divisions within the agency, and these are really tied more to timing issues, if you will, right? And so to date, we have already now spent close to $3 million of that reappropriations, since in the past we've been able to use those dollars. And again, it was really primarily about timing issues that we had within the agency. So like I said, We have spent about $3 million of those dollars and would look to have those, that $3 million restored so that we do not have to dip into the base funding. We'll move on to page 4. Here we talk about, really try to set the stage and compare your budget bill to our FY26 base allocations. And so this we're asking that we return as close as we can back to our base actual budget amounts, which includes returning all the funding for the Kansas Office of Broadband. The elimination of funding for broadband, and then there's 4 or 5 very specific categories that saw significant reductions, and those include Build Up Kansas, the International Division, our training programs, so the Kansas Industrial Training and Kansas Industrial Retraining Program, and then the Love Kansas campaign have made up the most of the loss of our funding there that you'll see. So on pages 5 and 6, I talk about those programs specifically. So Build Up Kansas is a program that we've partnered with the Association of General Contractors. And this program helps young people and their families discover the opportunities that are available in those craft professions, right? So we think about the construction trades. So not only does it promote those jobs, but it also is a tool to educate those and train other teachers and those sorts of folks to go into our schools and build up those programs. So specifically, Build Up Kansas has assisted 140 Kansas high schools, community colleges, and vo-tech colleges to start or enhance those vocational programs. These vocational programs have increased enrollment from 2,500 to right at 9,000 and have issued over 80,000 credentials. This program also offers a really robust website that has job postings and a career center. And you can upload your resume right there and reach out to potential employers through that site. So if we really want to remain competitive and focus on our economic growth, we're going to continue to need to prioritize programs like these. Our international division, I highlighted already some of our success there. But again, the division conducted 11 trade missions. We hosted 10 different delegations from other countries. And we've supported more than $13 billion in Kansas exports. If you're not familiar with our training program, so that's what we call KIT and KER, so that's our Kansas Industrial Training and Kansas Industrial Retraining. Again, these programs are for businesses looking to re-educate or upskill their employees. And so in 2024, the agency had 22 projects, with the average award for each trainee was right around $1,400. And then Love Kansas, like I said, that is our talent attraction campaign. And we've had right at 30 people move back to the state. They're living in places all across. So they're moved back to Atchison, for example, or Independence, Dodge City, Overland Park. Hutchinson, Manhattan, Bel Air are just a few examples. And they're coming back to us from places all across the country. So Indiana, North Carolina, Illinois, Utah, and Georgia are just a few other examples. Next, on page 6 of my testimony, just wanted to talk about the reinstatement of broadband funding. So this is our Office of Broadband Development was established in 2020 to ensure that all Kansans have the opportunity to live, work, and compete in a global economy by providing that universal access to affordable and high-quality, reliable broadband, right? So we have a staff of 12 that, again, manage those programs that have 86 active projects. And there's a little more than $66 million have been dedicated to those programs. And again, it's anticipated to connect over 100,000 homes or businesses. And then we've got 2 enhancement requests, one specific to Sunflower Summer. That's the tourism program that's started back in 2021 with federal dollars, trying to really promote and have our Kansas families go back out and visit each of those attractions, right? And so the federal dollars had been expended, and you all decided to go ahead and fund it using EDIF funds and to move the program from the Department of Education to the Department of Tourism. In 2024, we had 223 attractions participating. So that breakdown is 176 rural programs and 47 non-rural. And we saw almost 500,000 tickets claimed. And right at 90% of those participating attractions reported an increase in visitation due to the program. So in order to run that program successfully, we're needing enhancement dollars for FY25 so we can kick it off here in June. Then we split, obviously the program splits in between 2 fiscal years, so we'll need another enhancement request to get us through FY26. Then the last request is related to a specific business, Bombardier, there in Wichita. This is a really unique opportunity for them to go after some federal dollars. So we are requesting $5.75 million to be part of this larger project where they're coming in with their own private investment of $16 million. And this is to help them create their own infrastructure for these really top-level, top-secret defense contracts. So again, just a great opportunity to support an existing business here in the state, expand and kind of move to the future, if you will. So there's a lot going on in our budget, so I'm happy to answer all of the questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Questions? I can see we're not going to get finished presenting the budget today, so if everyone could be prepared to come back tomorrow to finish. But questions now. Representative Rogers.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm going to be I'm going to be as quick as I can. Broadband got cut, so what happens? Did those 12 jobs go away? Tell me what happens then.
Yes, so the dollars that you see in the commerce budget specifically were used to create that office, right? And so it is almost half of it is salaries. The other good portion of it is operating expenses, right? So all the things that you need to run an office, and then there's some travel dollars so that these folks can get out and check on communities and projects and providers to see that those are being implemented. So we use those dollars at first to go after those federal grants, right? Like we needed people within the Department of Commerce, the Broadband Development Division, to write those federal contracts so that we could capture as much of those dollars as we possibly could. Sadly, Kansas didn't get as much as some of our neighboring states. Our staff isn't as large as most of the neighboring states around us, but we've done a pretty good job, right? And so we've gotten lots of federal dollars coming in. Those federal dollars have lots of regulations and guidelines related to paying for salaries and personnel. And so in some ways for us, it was much easier to keep those state dollars supporting those personnel. While the federal money does support some, it doesn't support all of it. And it definitely, the office will be very, very limited if those dollars go away. And it could really jeopardize these projects moving forward, right? So we just closed out BEAD, which is the largest of our federal appropriation dollars. We just closed that application period. We received right at 200 applications, oversubscribed, so received lots more in requests than what we have as far as available funding. Our team is starting, our office is starting that review process, and then we'll have to make recommendations to the federal group, to NTIA, on which projects will be awarded and that deployment. And so it could be pretty detrimental if those dollars go away.
Okay,
Rogers.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. We can talk more because that really didn't answer the question. The reappropriations, you had almost $6 million that was reappropriated. Why was it so high? What didn't happen?
Yeah.
And that's my last question for today, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Sure.
On this subject.
Yeah, so you can see on page 4, my testimony, which of those buckets are the biggest as far as, oh no, sorry, one page two.
It's on
too far
page
ahead.
3.
Page 3, yes, sir. And so you can see which ones had the largest carryover, right? So the first one is the Love Kansas marketing campaign. So we did a lot of work research with a consultant group to make sure that we really understood the landscape. We knew what was our best assets as a state to promote and where most of those boomerangs, right, those people that we were wanting to come back to Kansas lived. So once we gathered that information, we created this overall campaign. So if you go to our website, if you just Google Love Kansas Marketing Campaign, you'll see that website. We did all of that work. And then ultimately, because of the timing, we're able to launch the program in July, and so that starts the new fiscal year. So one of our primary marketing strategies was to work with local communities as well as our higher education institutes and partner with them around homecoming events. We know that lots of folks, especially these boomerangs, these folks that we're really specifically targeting, will be back for those sorts of events. So we wanted to work with them and share our information and share the campaign at those events. So that's why you'll see that large carryover there, and why now we've spent close to $3 million of that reappropriations. Some of the others, so the small business R&D, that was within the office or the Division of Innovation, and we had some staffing issues there. It took us a long time. We just now were able to hire our leader for that particular division, and we're ready to kick things off, but you saw that carryover as we wanted to make sure that we had the right people in place so that we could then implement these programs.
Question going back to the broadband. So you said that there are some of the government funds were to be for salaries?
Some of the federal dollars can be used for salaries, yes, and are being used for salaries, yes.
And did Commerce use them for salaries, or did you depend solely on the state funds?
We did some with those federal dollars, but the state dollars pay more of our staffing.
Like how much more, percentage-wise?
I'll have to get you that number. I don't know the percentage.
Okay. Any other questions for Representative Curtis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, Rachel, Love Kansas, was that a program initiated by was that, okay.
Yes.
A few years ago, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm sure I will have more. I just have them all scattered everywhere. So, all right. It's 2:59. I think we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. So thank you, staff. Thank you, committee. Thank you, gallery. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 1:30. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's up in the air. We may, right now, I don't believe there's a meeting scheduled for Wednesday. Is there? No. We may change that. Yeah. All right, we are adjourned.